Cool. Well, hello, I'm Olivia Byrne. I am Vice Chair of the Scottish Youth Parliament. Shockingly, my first question for you is about education reform. We've talked a lot today about how integral education and learning is to the lives of children and young people. And what steps are you taking in your role to make sure that their views are at the centre of education reform?
So thanks for the question, Olivia. We've talked already today about the Learners' Charter, which I think is really fundamental, but I'm really keen to engage more broadly with SYP and with other organisations on how we can ensure children's voice and young people's voices are at the heart of all that we do in terms of education reform. And one of the things I was struck by again today, and I hear it repeatedly when I'm in and out of schools, is the ongoing impact that the pandemic has had on our children and young people and their learning. And we must not forget that, because the outcomes for our children and young people who grew up through the pandemic will be different from those that came before them. And we need to think again, I think, in government about how we can support them. So that looks different in different educational settings, but we must have children's voices at the heart of it. I think the Learners' Charter is a really good piece of evidence in Scottish Government about how we're already working differently. But I think we need to use that approach in other areas of Scottish Government. So I'm certainly taking away how we can work with Cabinet colleagues, for example, and how they can ensure that young people's voices are at the heart of all that we do.
Yeah, 100%. I think the point around the pandemic as well, the impacts are still really visceral, but it does present such an opportunity to make some really progressive changes to our education system, which is really exciting for us as young people. Somewhat related to that question then, I was going to ask you, the UNCRC Act obviously came into force last summer, which was really exciting. And how has that impacted your role so far, and how do you see it being a really integral part of your work in the future?
So I think it's already integral. And of course, been working with colleagues across the government, and Ms Somerville has led on the legislation. But I think today's a really great example of how the UNCRC has impacted and continues to impact on all that we do in Scottish Government. And it was interesting to hear that we're pretty unique in Scotland in terms of having a cabinet meeting with yourselves once a year to ensure that children's voices and young people's voices are at the heart of all that we do. And that learning came out of, I think, the Year of Young People back in 2018, but it's really integral to the UNCRC. So I'd like to see other organisations, local authorities, for example, leading the way in ensuring that they have young people's voices involved in all their decision making at local level. I'm glad that we have this approach to the Cabinet Takeover once a year, but I think there's more that we can all be doing to help support the voice of young people across Scottish Government.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're a natural.